we are here. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Lopes Goes Last podcast. I, of course, am your host, Tyler Lopes. If you have not subscribed yet, please feel free to do so. Also, hit that bell icon so you never miss any one of my videos. And please follow me on Facebook and Twitter. It'll be at Lopes Goes Last podcast on Facebook and at Lopes Goes Last on Twitter. Man, I'm so excited. We're back. We're back in the swing of things. And just in case you guys missed my last video that I uploaded about a week ago at the time of recording, things are going to be changing a little bit here. So there's going to be different formats of things. This is something I don't think I touched on in the last video, but specifically, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start breaking things up into smaller chunks, so it's a little bit more digestible for all you guys out there. I am still going to be uploading the full episodes of the podcasts, however, so if you do prefer the full-length podcast format, then we'll certainly have that option for you, but we'll also be kind of breaking things up as things go along. There'll be more frequent uploads, just kind of in smaller chunks all throughout the week and through the weekends. So hopefully that's something that you guys will enjoy. If there's specific things that you guys ever want me to talk about, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below this video or any of my other videos. I will certainly be watching out for those. But with that being said, let's get right into our first topic of the day. So what I'd like to start out with is talking about the New England Patriots. I haven't really gotten a lot of chance to talk about anything that's really been going on this season, whether it was basketball, baseball, or football, but since we are right in the middle of football season, I thought I'd give you guys my thoughts on that first. So, here is kind of where I am at in terms of the Patriots. I have no clue. That's where I'm at. I don't really know what to think about them right now. It's pretty clear what kind of team we are dealing with here. So, the New England Patriots are 6-4 as of the time of this recording. They just beat the Jets this past Sunday, and I would say in convincing fashion. It should have been in convincing fashion, quite frankly, considering how incredibly their defense played. But, unfortunately, it took what essentially amounted to a walk-off punt return touchdown by third-round pick Marcus Jones out of Houston, and there was a 10-3 victory for the Patriots. So good win on the home floor, or on the home field, I should say. But I'm really just, I have a lot of concerns about the Patriots. I had the same exact concerns going into the season, and they have shown me nothing that will alleviate those concerns for me. Those concerns, obviously, for those of you who had not heard my past thoughts on this, is the offense. They just don't really have one. Their offensive line has gotten significantly worse in just about every kind of way that you could imagine. Obviously, they traded Shaq Mason over to the Bucs, although I would say the Bucs need Shaq Mason a lot more than the Patriots do right now, but that's for another day. So that's obviously a huge concern. The health of Damian Harris is a huge concern. I'm pretty sure he's in a contract year right now. So the fact that he really has not been super effective, has just over 300 rushing yards as of the time of recording. Obviously, this is recorded before the Thursday night game against Minnesota. So we'll see if those concerns kind of lift with that. But for right now, you're more than halfway into the season, and if you're Damian Harris, the fact that you don't even have 400 rushing yards right now, it's got to be concerning when you're going into free agency, especially when you have a bullet train like Ramondre Stevenson behind you. He has been quite good this year. He has over 600 rushing yards at this point, even though he's really been the number 2 running back for on the depth chart for a lot of the year, obviously, unless Damian Harris was playing, unless he was healthy. But even sometimes when Damian Harris has been healthy, Ramondre Stevenson has been that number 1 guy, which has been really nice. So he's kind of flipped back and forth between number 1 and number 2. So his opportunities have grown this year as compared to last year, and I'm hoping that continues because he's done well with the limited opportunities that he has had and the bit of a decline in the quality of the offensive line work that has been going on lately for them. So, that was a concern for me, the running game going into the year. They were successful last year, but obviously they had a much better offensive line. And this year, the offensive line hasn't just affected the run game, but it has also affected the passing game. Mac Jones is getting terrorized back there. As of right now, they have given up 36 sacks in 10 games, which, it's not horrible. It's not, like the worst stat you could possibly have. It's not, world ending or anything, but it's still, almost 4 sacks a game. That is really, really not good. If you are the Patriots, you want to get that down, to 2.5 to 3, if not less, obviously. But for the Patriots, obviously, I'm sure considering all of the injuries that they've had on the offensive line, and obviously trading Shaq Mason, the development of Cole Strange, their first-round pick, who hasn't looked fantastic, but he's been serviceable. I'm sure that they'll take that in a lot of ways. But the main concern has obviously been the passing offense, and absolutely nothing has changed. I actually think they've, quite frankly, taken several steps back. If you'd have told me at the end of last season that, going into this year, Jacoby Myers would still be by far our leading pass catcher halfway through the season, 10 games in, more than halfway now, we're 10 games in, I would have screamed. I mean, it's absurd. And listen, this is no disrespect to Jacoby Myers. He's obviously a good wide receiver. He's succeeding at a high level in the Patriots system, which as a wide receiver does not happen very often. There's been a very select few that have, especially over the last 20 years since Bill Belichick took over as head coach. There hasn't been a lot of wide receivers that have succeeded. And so the fact that he's, up there. He's got almost 600 receiving yards. I don't think he's quite on pace to hit 1,000 yards, but considering the absolute anemic offense that they have had this year, that's still pretty impressive. He's on pace to have about 800 receiving yards, which again, in this anemic offense is pretty darn good. And the red zone struggles as well. Not just for Jacoby Myers. We obviously know that's well documented. His first touchdown came, I think, week 9 or week 10 of last season against the Browns. And it was, a garbage time touchdown too. So it wasn't even, a touchdown that put him ahead in the game or something. They were already up by 20 or 30 points at that point. But still, it was nice to see. And so, Jacoby Myers has struggled to get in the end zone, certainly. But everybody else has too. It's really frustrating. The Patriots only have 9 total passing touchdowns on the season. That doesn't even account for 1 a game, which if, my quarterback every week may be throwing 1 touchdown, I mean, that's sad. It's really, really not good. Now, it's not as sad as some other quarterbacks that we have seen this year, and we'll get into some of that a little bit later, but it's still pretty bad. Quite frankly, it's not something that I would be proud of on the Patriots, and certainly they're not. And I know that the offense wants to do better, and quite frankly, they need to do better if they are going to handle the AFC East this year. They are no longer the AFC least. They used to be. It used to be the Patriots and then a bunch of teams that would be lucky to win 6 games. Now, everybody, 10 weeks in, has won 6 games in this division. Every single team. And that has not happened in quite some time. It's actually quite staggering when you start to think about the quality of football that's come out of the AFC East this year. I know I didn't expect the Jets to be this good this year. I thought that they would take a step up. I thought they might win 6 games total, maybe 7. I honestly figured they'd probably go 7-10, especially against weaker opponents. You figure they probably steal one against the Patriots. They may steal one against the Bills, and I'm pretty sure they've beat them at least once. I know that they've beat them at least once. They may have even beaten them twice at this point, which is just crazy to think about. I know they've beaten the Dolphins, so they're beating quality teams that I just didn't think that they would. But they have beaten them. They have beaten the Patriots, and again, we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's really, really interesting to see the quality of football coming out of the AFC East. So especially just to keep up in your own division, the Patriots' passing offense just needed to take a big step up. They went out and got Devontae Parker, and, Parker has been the same guy he always has been. He's, mostly available, but, sometimes he's hurt, which means he's going to miss, 4, 5, 6 games. And I think right now he has, 350 yards, maybe not even, couple touchdowns, it's not really what you're looking for out of your number one guy. And obviously he's not even the number one guy because Jacoby Myers is still the number one guy. And so, again, no disrespect to Jacoby Myers, but the fact that Jacoby Myers has to be the number one target in this offense still in 2022 when it was so poor last year, I mean, it's just, it makes me sad. And I know it makes a lot of other Patriots fans out there sad as well. So, those concerns for the offense have not waned one bit. Just looking kind of at the team statistics, the Patriots are bottom 10 in just about every single offensive category you could be in, and some of them they are bottom 5. In terms of passing touchdowns, they are tied for third worst in the NFL with a few other teams. The only teams that are worse than them are the absolutely awful Steelers and the probably, arguably even worse Denver Broncos. That is a video for another day, by the way. The Broncos, I do not know what is going on over there. Russell Wilson has just not looked like himself, but either way, that's a video for another day. So, the Patriots' offense is, especially their passing offense, has been atrocious. Let's just be honest. It's been atrocious all year. It's not what you expect out of the Patriots. A lot of it is on Mac Jones. And a lot of it's on the offensive line too. A lot of it's on the receivers. It's on everybody, quite frankly. It's on the coaching staff for, not really designing for guys to get open more frequently. Honestly, when you spend as much money as the Patriots did a couple of off seasons ago to get a guy like Jonnu Smith, and to get a guy like Hunter Henry. Now, Hunter Henry had a nice year last year, had 9 touchdowns, but this year, I mean, it's not just him, but nobody's getting open in the red zone. The red zone, has been just atrocious for the Patriots. It has not been friendly to them. They cannot seem to punch it in the red zone. They're bottom 10 again in red zone conversion percentage in the NFL this year. They just are not getting open, and that's why I think a guy like Tyquan Thornton can really be a weapon for the Patriots, but he just hasn't been out on the field very often. He missed the first handful of games with injury, and since he's come back, he hasn't really been on the field very much because, you got somebody like, Devontae Parker's out there, Jacoby Myers is out there, Hunter Henry's out there, Jonnu Smith is out there. There's only so many spots for these guys, and the Patriots aren't exactly, thrilled to go 5 wide all the time. You're not going to have 3, 4, 5 wide receivers on the field at one time very often if you're the Patriots. And if you're hell-bent on playing Jacoby Myers, which obviously you should, and hell-bent on Devontae Parker, then, you're going to miss opportunities to get other guys out there that may help you a little bit in the red zone. And, when you don't really have a passing offense in the red zone, everybody can just stop the run. And no matter how good Ramondre Stevenson or Damian Harris will be at the running game or in the red zone, you're just not going to find a lot of space in the red zone if everybody knows you're getting the football. It doesn't really matter who you're playing. These are all professionals. So if they know it's coming, or if they have a real good gut feeling that it's coming, chances are it's not going to work if you have an average offensive line and 2 slightly above average running backs. They're not Derrick Henry. They're not Jonathan Taylor. They're not Alvin Kamara. They're not these running backs that are so good at missing people in space or, just otherworldly good running backs, whether in the red zone or not, that you can get away with missing an assignment or the other team knowing what's coming. You can't do that if you're the Patriots. That's something that is just really frustrating for not just me, but for a lot of Patriots fans, going into the rest of the season. Now, all that being said, the defense has been outstanding. Almost the polar opposite of the offense. Clearly, the Patriots' goal this offseason was to fix the defense, and it was one of the things that I said that really needed to happen. The 2 things that needed to happen were they needed to fix their passing offense, they needed to get some more weapons, and I guess on paper, they added Devontae Parker and Tyquan Thornton, so I guess you could say they tried to do that, but it hasn't been effective. And they needed to get more youth and more speed and more just grittiness and toughness and quickness on the defensive end, and they have done that. They have looked fantastic. Matthew Judon is, really making a case for another Pro Bowl season, and honestly, maybe even be in contention for Defensive Player of the Year at this point. I'm not sure if the pundits are kind of still looking at that as the case. I know that early on in the season he certainly was, but Matthew Judon does tend to slow down as the season goes along, but he has stemmed that tide for now. He's just been on a tear. I think at this point he's got somewhere around 12 sacks, maybe 13, 10 games in, which is just fantastic. Especially with a 17-game season, you're talking about he may very well push for 20 sacks, which obviously is going to be up there with one of the best pass rush seasons of all time. Not quite, if you hit 20 sacks, not quite the record, but you're going to be very close. Anybody who has a 20-sack season will, they're gonna stand the test of time for quite some time, even with the extra week being added on a couple of years ago. So he's been performing well. The secondary, which I was very concerned about over, at the beginning of the season with the departure of J.C. Jackson, they've performed very well, which has been really great to see. Especially Jack Jones. He's got a couple of interceptions. He's definitely holding his own. And I know that I said, and I don't know if you guys remember me saying this back when I did that kind of hour-long analysis of the Patriots draft, I didn't really think Jack Jones was that great of a pick. He didn't show me anything in college to really showcase that grit and determination. But obviously, Bill Belichick found himself another defensive back, either in the mid-rounds or even undrafted. Obviously, Jack Jones wasn't undrafted, but he found another guy, another double J that's going to be in that secondary that looks like he could be a star. He has filled in for J.C. Jackson, and he has filled in admirably. And then obviously, the other guys that were there before in the secondary, Devin McCourty, Jalen Mills, Miles Bryant. Miles Bryant has taken a big step this year as well. Got limited playing time last year. Definitely played more as the season went along last year, but this year he's had a much bigger impact. Obviously, you've got just many different guys back there that have really stepped up. Obviously, Jonathan Jones continues to be Jonathan Jones. And by the way, if you're not a Patriots fan, it can be very, very ridiculous to try and sort through all these double J names. Not necessarily Jalen Mills, because he's not a double J, but you got Jalen Mills, you got the former Patriot J.C. Jackson, you've got Jonathan Jones, you've got Jack Jones, you've got Marcus Jones. There's just all these Joneses and J's and double J's. It's a headache. But anyways, kind of getting back to it. The defense overall has been fantastic. They are, you say I talked about the Patriots offense being bottom 10 in just about every category. The Patriots defense is top 10 and top 5 in most categories, including sacks, interceptions, yards given up, touchdowns given up. It's just been an overall dominant performance by the Patriots defense all season long. They are definitely riding their defense. Now, there's obviously been some games that the Patriots defense has not looked very good, but quite frankly, they've looked virtually impenetrable all season long. Now, they obviously looked that way 10 games into last year, and we saw what happened by the end. But we're hoping that with the kind of injection of youth and speed that the Patriots have thrown into their defense, we're hoping that does not happen, obviously, this year. And I think Minnesota is going to be a really great test. If I'm not mistaken, Minnesota Vikings, I believe, are 8-2. They have had a fantastic year so far. They've really taken a big step up. Kirk Cousins has looked great. Justin Jefferson is, putting his case in to be the best wide receiver in football right now. And he, and obviously you've got Dalvin Cook. You got a good offensive line. You got a solid defense with a lot of really, really hungry and good back seven players. It's really, really fun to watch the Minnesota Vikings. But the Patriots are going to be a good test for their defense. But I will say this. I don't know how you're stopping Justin Jefferson. I don't care who you have back there. He just seems to be on another level right now. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But those are really my thoughts on the New England Patriots. So if you guys have any different thoughts that you want to kind of talk about in terms of that, just leave those comments right below. So with that, let's move on to our next topic. Let's kind of transition, I think, to one of the Patriots' opponents over this season, and actually the team that they beat just this past Sunday in the New York Jets. The New York Jets, I talked about them a little earlier. They've had a really, really good year. I thought that they were going to win 6 or 7 games total. They have already won 6 games, and they are 10 weeks in, or 11 weeks in, whatever it has been at this point. But still, either way, they have overperformed my expectations. Their defense has performed very, very well. I did not think their defense would be as good as they are, but you've got a guy who almost certainly is going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year in Sauce Gardner that you drafted very, very high up, and he already looks like one of the best DBs in football, which is just scary to think about. You may have another Darrelle Revis on your hands if you are the New York Jets. And again, it's not just Sauce Gardner, but their whole defense has played very well. They're getting pressure on the quarterback. They're able to actually keep guys in front of them in the secondary right now, even with the departure of Marcus May. So it's been really, really interesting to watch the Jets really perform well, quite frankly, in spite of their quarterback. And their quarterback situation, which obviously was Joe Flacco for the first few weeks of the season, and then Zach Wilson ended up coming back to kind of take over the rest of this season so far, and that is where I am going to talk about what has been going on with the Jets over the last 24, 48, 72 hours-ish, ever since their game against the Patriots. So for those of you who have not kind of been following along and kind of understanding what's been going on in Jets world, Zach Wilson really messed up pretty bad. Now, before I get into that, let's talk about the Jets' performance this past weekend against the Patriots. Now, obviously, I myself am a Patriots fan, so it was nice to see the Jets stink so badly on offense. But quite frankly, their defense played fantastic. They really did. They really played bend, don't break. Mac Jones only had 4 incompletions the whole game, which, I mean, obviously they didn't score any touchdowns on offense, so it wasn't, fantastic by any stretch, but he took care of the ball. He made the right reads the vast majority of the time. And you know what? The Patriots still almost had 100 rushing yards on the game, which, again, is not very good. But, it's not like they were completely stymied on the ground either. But the Jets were able to really hold them. And, they only allowed 1 field goal, and I think Nick Folk may have missed a field goal as well. But that's it. That's all the Patriots amounted on offense. And then obviously you had the walk-off punt return touchdown. That doesn't have anything to do with the offense. But it was an interesting game to see the Jets defense perform so well. And again, against a pretty anemic Patriots offense at this point that hasn't really been able to do much against anybody, quite frankly. But that begs the question, what in the world happened to the Jets offense? Now, look, we've seen shutouts, right? We've seen teams only score 3 points or only score 6 points or only score 7 points. We've seen that all the time in the NFL. And so, what's so special about this time? Like, why am I talking about it other than the Jets losing and the Patriots winning? There is something very special about this pummeling on that the Patriots gave the Jets on offense, or the Patriots defense gave the Jets offense. Let me clarify that real quick, because obviously the Patriots offense didn't do much either. The score will say that the game was very close, and it was in a lot of ways, but when you kind of dive deeper into the statistics here, Zach Wilson, for an entire football game in 2022, almost 2023 at this point, we're only about 5-ish weeks away from it being 2023, 5 or 6 weeks. So, we're in a different state of football at this point than we were back in the 1970s and 80s when, quite frankly, even then a stat line like this would be embarrassing. Zach Wilson went 9 for 22 for 77 yards passing. I mean, that's just horrible. I mean, there's no other way to describe it to you guys. I tend to kind of use these adjectives in, kind of in succession, talk about it a lot. But it was horrible. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, just look up the stats. His total QBR was somewhere around 26, which I would not be shocked if that's the worst number we've seen, not just this season, but in the last 5 or 6 years from a quarterback that played the whole game and, just and didn't throw any interceptions. That's another thing. He didn't turn the ball over, which is just incredible to think about, that neither quarterback turned the ball over. This was just a complete lack of any kind of competency on offense whatsoever. It's one thing to have a horrible QBR, a horrible day on offense because you're throwing it to the other team all day, or your running back fumbles 4 times, like we saw the Rams do last year in the NFC Championship game, or in the NFC Divisional game, against the Buccaneers. But it's a whole nother thing to just literally not be able to move the ball or find open receivers, or you're missing every throw, and yet you still don't throw any interceptions or turn the ball over. Like, that's what's sad, to me anyway. Well, there's a lot more that's sad other than that, obviously, but, just kind of diving deeper into the stats again, 9 for 22 for 77 yards. That's bad. In the second half of the game against the Patriots, the Jets offense managed 23 rushing yards, which, again, that's really bad. But even worse, they managed a total of negative 21 passing yards in the second half. Yes, you heard me. Negative 21 passing yards. That means that for an entire half, 30 game minutes of football, where Zach Wilson was never taken out of the game, he took every snap in that game for the Jets. Their total net yards for an entire half of football was 2. 23 positive rushing yards minus 21 passing yards. You put those together, that means they had a total net gain of 2 yards for 30 minutes of football. They didn't turn the ball over. They didn't fumble the ball. They didn't throw any interceptions. It was just horrible. They took sacks. They ran the ball a few times with some marginal success. At least they had positive gains on the ground, obviously. When Zach Wilson actually ran the football, he had a couple of gains, 8 yards, 10 yards, 12 yards, whatever it was, right? But when he threw the ball, quite frankly, he might as well have just thrown the ball into the stands, because he actually would have had more passing yards on the game if he had done that. If he had just ran out of the pocket and thrown the ball in the stands every single play. Now, when that happens as a quarterback, when that happens as an offense, that's obviously not just on one guy, right? That's on your receivers for not getting open. That's on your offensive line for not being able to block, whether in the run or protecting your quarterback. But a lot of it is on your quarterback to make the right reads, make the throws. I didn't see the entirety of the game, but my guess is the Patriots weren't super glued to the Jets receivers every second of every play. That's almost impossible to happen. That's almost impossible to do. So my guess is Zach Wilson probably missed some open receivers and he threw to the wrong guy. And he probably also had some just horrible throws where he threw it over guys, bouncing throws. I certainly saw some of those, but, for just kind of reference, it's not like he was just, it's not like wide receivers are dropping balls all the live long day, and it's not like the Patriots were super glued to him all day. They were for a lot of it, but certainly not for all of it. So, again, when you have a game like that as an offense, accountability is really important. The Jets defense played absolutely out of their minds. They played so well. And we saw, or at least I saw, Garrett Wilson, the rookie wide receiver taken very, very high out of Ohio State this year in the draft for the Jets, talk about it after the game. And he did not mince words. He said a lot of curse words that I will not obviously say here, but, he just said it's absolute crap. It's absolutely horrible. There's no excuse for it. Things need to change and need to get better. The coaches need to be better. The players need to be better. I need to be better. The quarterback needs to be better. We all need to be better. He called out everybody. Now, granted, you can kind of say, oh, well, he's a rookie. You should shut his mouth. But, hey, you know what's even sadder? Nobody taking accountability for that. And I'm not saying that nobody other than Garrett Wilson would have taken accountability for that, because obviously a lot of guys have, the coaches have. But who did not take any accountability for that, and that's what I want to kind of get into today, is Zach Wilson, the quarterback. I mean, he's 22 years old out of BYU, and he, point blank, just did not take any responsibility. He kind of did something similar to what Garrett Wilson did. He talked about the wide receivers and how they needed to, be better, and the coaches needed to be better, offensive line needed to be better. Never once mentioned himself. Never said that he needed to be better. And then a reporter, a reporter asked this 22-year-old kid about the easiest question that you could possibly have. Hey, do you feel like you let your defense down today? Well, your defense, held the Patriots to 3 points, no offensive touchdowns, less than 400 yards on the game, probably, honestly, less than 300 yards on the game if I had to look at the stats again. Again, 3 points, your special teams gave up a touchdown late, but that's not on the defense. And you had no support, no rest, just 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out after 3 and out. And, it just a complete anemic offense for the Jets. That's what the Jets defense had. And one of the things about football that people don't really talk about a lot is the fatigue factor on defense is real. If your offense isn't working, if they're not able to milk the clock, if they're not able to string a couple of first downs together every once in a while, they're basically running to the sideline. They get 3 or 4 or 5 minutes in real time. They get a commercial break and then a couple of plays, and then they're back on the field and they're running, trying to keep up with these wide receivers. Now, again, the Patriots receiver room is not the best in the world, but they're still pro athletes. These guys are still, at the top of their game. So, trying to keep up with them and trying to lock them down every play, especially when the pressure is on, when you have to lock them down because your offense is performing so poorly, it's not easy. It is exhausting, and I cannot imagine. I wouldn't last 2 seconds out there. But, it's the easiest question in the world what that reporter asked Zach Wilson. Do you feel like you let your defense down today? When you did not do anything on offense, 2 total yards in the second half. Somehow you got that even though you didn't turn the ball over. I still don't know how that's possible. You only scored 3 points. You didn't run the ball. You were missing throws. Did you let your defense down? Easiest question in the world. The answer is yes, I did let my team down. I let my defense down. I let my receivers down. I'm the quarterback. I'm the leader of the offense. I'm the leader of this team. I need to be better. Easy. Easiest question in the world. What was his response? No. Actually, technically, it was no, and then he walked off the podium. Wow. You talk about stupid, right? You talk about not taking accountability, and you talk about immaturity. That it's all over that answer right there. Listen. Here's a saying that I learned back in high school that I still carry with me to this day. That this is how I honestly operate when it comes to business, when it comes to my podcast, when it comes to just dealing with friends, family, just other people in general. If you are the leader of something, if you are the person that's in charge, or when you are, one of the better quality people at what you're doing, again, whether that's your job, whether that's at your home, whether that's with your spouse, whether that's with your kids, whether that's with whoever. If you are the leader, when it's going good, it's on your team, and when it's going bad, it's on you. Because as the leader, you need to keep that accountability for all of your teammates, and you need to keep that kind of positive attitude, and you need to take responsibility. Now listen, am I saying that game was entirely Zach Wilson's fault? No. But a lot of it was his fault. A lot of it is the fact that in the handful of games that he has played against the New England Patriots, he has absolutely stunk up the joint. And quite frankly, it's infuriating to look at a quarterback that not just this game, but several times this season has thrown for less than 150 yards, that has thrown more interceptions than touchdowns, and you were the number 2 pick in the draft. This is not just some random guy. This is a guy that was drafted before Justin Fields, before Mac Jones, before Trey Lance. The only guy that was drafted before him was what everyone agreed to be the best quarterback prospect we'd seen since Andrew Luck coming out of the draft in Trevor Lawrence, and possibly one of the best prospects ever to come out of the draft. I heard people saying that he was the best quarterback to come out of the draft right there and right then and there, most pro-ready quarterback since Michael Vick in 2001. Now, I don't agree with that. Obviously, I think Andrew Luck was very, very special. But I've heard people say that. And that's just insane to think that the only guy drafted before this kid that made these statements was that incredible prospect. It was that incredible prospect. And instead of the Jets getting that incredible prospect, they took Zach Wilson out of BYU, number 2 overall. This is their guy. Sam Darnold didn't work out. Mark Sanchez didn't work out. Any of these other quarterbacks that the Jets have had over the last 15, 20 years, quite frankly, ever since Joe Namath, have just not worked. Sanchez had marginal success. People forget. They went to back-to-back AFC championship games, his rookie year and his second year. It's not like Mark Sanchez didn't have success at some point in his career. Now, obviously, it fell off a cliff from there, but for the point being, he still had success. Brett Favre was in that locker room at one point. Brett Favre is one of the most successful quarterbacks of all time. So, the Jets' locker room has just not had a ton. They have had a little bit, but they haven't had a ton of success from these quarterbacks. Sam Darnold is lost somewhere in Carolina, although I think he's supposed to start this weekend. But he's lost out there. He's somehow third on a quarterback chart, despite, being picked third overall in the draft a few years ago. It's sad to see. And for Zach Wilson, you were tagged to be the man. I mean, when you're taken second overall at quarterback, you are not expected to stink. You might have a bit of a tough first year. You'll make some rookie mistakes. But by your second and by your third year, you're supposed to start taking leaps. I mean, we saw it with guys like Deshaun Watson. We've seen Trevor Lawrence take a big step forward this year. I can think of a million guys in the past that have taken, steps forward in their second year. But Zach Wilson's honestly gone backwards. And when you have a guy like that that's 22 years old, when you have a guy that has not taken any accountability for what has happened to his team this year, it's infuriating. I mean, even as a Patriots fan, it's so upsetting to see a guy take such little responsibility for his team's failure. And it's not like, it's not like he's on a team that's 2-10 right now, or 2-8. He's not. He's on a team that's in the hunt for the playoffs. If the Jets had beaten the Patriots this week, they would have been in first place in their division because they'd beaten the Bills, they'd beaten the Dolphins, they would have had the tiebreaker. But instead, they're in last place. See, that's all it takes in this AFC East division. That's all it takes right now. You lose one winnable game, you might be in last place in your division, despite the fact that you maybe have won 10 games. There is honestly still a mathematical possibility that all 4 teams in the AFC East are going to make the playoffs with the new playoff format. Now, I really hope that doesn't happen because that would just be a free-for-all. And quite frankly, other than the Bills, I wouldn't be shocked if if Miami, New England, and the Jets, unless, of course, they all played each other, if they were just all eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. Because quite frankly, when you got teams at the top that are as successful as they are, like the Ravens and like the Bills and like the Chiefs, you're not going to stand much of a chance. So for me, the most infuriating thing about Zach Wilson's comments of saying, no, he doesn't feel like he let the defense down, is even if you don't feel like you did, even if your teammates know you didn't let them down, you're still supposed to say it, man. I cannot tell you the amount of times that Tom Brady for the Patriots was just so absurdly ridiculed, criticized, thrown under the bus when he's the GOAT. Like, people saying, oh, it's all Tom Brady's fault that the Patriots lost last week. I heard people say it was all Tom Brady's fault that the Patriots lost to the Eagles in the Super Bowl a few years ago when Tom Brady threw for 500 freaking yards. Like, what do you want the man to do? Throw for 900 yards and 28 touchdowns? Come on. But that's a man that still says, I could have done better. I could have made this throw. This guy was open, I missed him. In that case, I dropped that football that they ran a trick play and Tom Brady dropped the football. Tom Brady would still take accountability. He still would take the blame for a lot and try and, get that bad spotlight off of his teammates, because that's what a leader does. When things are going good, it's all about I can't do it without my guys. Garrett got open a million times today. This guy made Denzel Mims made a fantastic catch in the end zone, or whatever it is. It's all about your team. My offensive line blocked for me all day. I didn't get touched all afternoon. It's all because of them. Whatever, I don't care. It's all about the team when things are going good, and when things are bad, you know what? I didn't play well enough today. I missed a couple of open throws. We didn't convert on third down enough, that we should. I missed some opportunities. I've got to be better, and I'm going to prepare next week for freaking Pittsburgh or whoever the heck you're playing next week, and we're gonna bounce back from this. I can assure you. That's what you want to hear from your leader, even if you're sitting there going, dude, that you threw for 450 yards and the defense stunk, right? Yeah, but you're still supposed to take accountability as a leader. That's what you do. Heck, I've heard coaches take responsibility for their teams being awful. The guys that don't even go out there and play that are taking responsibility for the teams being awful. And that's what leaders do. Zach Wilson, clearly not a leader. And that all brings us to kind of the formality of this all, which is today, Robert Saleh announced Zach Wilson is actually going to be benched this week. He's not going to start in their next game. And again, I can't remember who they're playing right now, or next week, excuse me. But, yeah, that's what he deserves. I mean, I'm sorry. I hate to be that blunt, but it's what he deserves. Kid's 22. Now, am I saying that Zach Wilson's a complete bust and he's never going to turn out to be anything? No. He's got a lot of talent. I've seen, plays that, he looks like the number 2 overall pick sometimes. I've seen him throw for 400 yards in a game. I mean, he's got talent. Trust me, he's a good player. But he's very inconsistent, he's very immature, and he clearly doesn't know what it takes to be a leader yet. That doesn't mean he can't develop into one. That doesn't mean that he won't eventually turn into one. But right now, I really hope that this is just a big wake-up call for Zach Wilson, and that we're going to see top-notch Zach Wilson from now on. I hope he takes this, he learns from it, and, he might be benched for the rest of the year. Depending on how Mike White plays, I've seen Mike White go off once, but still, it's possible. So, you never know. And so I really hope that he learns from it. I hope that he kind of figures this out, and I really hope that at a certain point, he will be able to take this, become the leader that the Jets need him to be, because, even though they're in the rival division of the Patriots, I just love watching good football. And you never want young stud guys with a lot of talent to just flame out, because then everybody loses out on wonderful football and possible incredible memories. So, shout out to Zach Wilson, and I hope that he learns from it. But right now, he needs to sit his butt on the pine for a little bit and kind of think about what he's done. He looks like a teenager. Let's treat him like one. Go to your room and think about what you've done. That being said, let's move on to the... I don't really know how to describe the Red Sox season this year. I mean, I don't really know how to describe it. It was pretty bad. So nothing that they did really interested me. Nobody this year really performed to an incredible standard. Xander Bogaerts did what he usually does, which he's one of the best shortstops in baseball. So, maybe you got one guy that performed very well. Rafael Devers, I honestly thought he'd be in the MVP race this year. I know he was hurt for some of the year, but he just didn't perform with where I thought he would be. JD Martinez continues to, not live up to the rest of the contract. He had one really, really good season, and the rest, he's a little bit overpaid. He's a good player, still a little bit overpaid. And then there's the pitching. Oh, man. The pitching was putrid. I said a long time ago before the season started that I thought the Red Sox would be in third place. And the only reason that I said third place was because, to be honest, I didn't have the heart to say fourth place, but that's really where I thought they'd be. I thought they'd be in fourth. But somehow they were even worse than the Baltimore Orioles, who literally were getting rid of people still at the trade deadline. They were trading people away. Traded away Trey Mancini. You still have Cedric Mullins, but they got worse throughout the year, but they still played better than the Red Sox this year. And again, I talked about early on, if the Red Sox didn't have enough pitching, they were just going to suffer. James Paxton was, he obviously was rehabbing his injury. And, maybe the Red Sox would have been a little bit better had Chris Sale been healthy. But that poor guy, he just came back. And then he takes a line drive to the wrist, breaks his wrist. He's out for the year again. And, the guy has thrown like 15 games since signing that big contract. And, it's heartbreaking. It's really, really heartbreaking to see a guy that's that talented just be completely immobilized for years now. He has barely pitched in 2 years. So 2 or 3 years, probably at this point. So it's really, really sad. It's really frustrating to kind of have to endure that. As a Red Sox fan, this guy, when he's out there, he's one of the best pitchers I've ever seen when he's healthy. It is so much fun to watch. Obviously everybody compares him to Randy Johnson for, obvious reasons. Big power lefty, very lanky guy, kind of unorthodox delivery. Like that's Randy Johnson to a T. And the competitive fire also. But for me, I compare him to Pedro, and not in like his pitching style or anything, but just in his magnetism. Like when he's out there, you want to watch him pitch. So I just really hope that he gets back. I really hope that he gets back to being that guy that the Red Sox need, and that just ace. And when you got a guy that is going to threaten to have 20 wins every year, regardless of how good your team is, that's a real coup for the Red Sox. And so hopefully he gets back out there soon. Hopefully he gets back healthy soon. But other than that, the pitching staff, and obviously they didn't have him for all but 6 innings or whatever it was this year. Pitching was horrible. And when Nate Eovaldi went down with injury, you were left with Michael Wacha, who had a really good year, to be fair. He was he had like a 2.80 ERA at the end of the season, and he obviously missed some time with injury as well. But you're left with Michael Wacha, Rich Hill. I don't even know anymore. Like who else were you left with at that point? You had a couple of younger guys thrown in there. Obviously, you had Nate Eovaldi for the time that he was healthy. You got rid of Martin Perez, who I have said publicly that he was horrible for the Red Sox, and I don't even understand how he made the postseason roster. He just goes to Texas and has the best year of his career by far and makes the All-Star team, and just got paid $20 million. Like, what the heck? But anyway, the Red Sox didn't have any pitching. None. Bullpen was awful. Starting pitching was awful. And then you wonder why the team was awful. So, and then to kind of top it all off, the Red Sox trade deadline was so confusing. I just was like, what was going on? Like, none of this makes sense. They traded for Eric Hosmer. So, okay, so you're going all in, even though you're in 4th place. Fine, you're the Red Sox, I understand. So, you take on that huge contract. And you trade for Tommy Pham. It's like, oh, wow. Okay, so you guys really are going all in. But then you trade Christian Vasquez, your starting catcher, who's one of the best catchers in baseball. Okay, so you're not going all in. So, what is going on? And then, in the trade to get Eric Hosmer, you traded your best pitching prospect in Jason Groome. Like, I don't get it. I really didn't get it. It was a very frustrating season. I hope that the Red Sox make a big splash in the offseason this year. Obviously, Shane Bloom, I still trust the process that guy's putting us through. I can't wait to see how some of the young guys that are in the minor league system, because we do have a much better minor league system now. I can't wait to see some of those young guys come back up. Rob Refsnyder was one of my favorite players to watch for the Red Sox this year. He had a really nice, solid season, and he's back. Just recently re-signed for a year. So I don't know. I'm interested to kind of see what happens with the Red Sox this year. But I mean, I don't know, man. It was a very, very tough season. Difficult to analyze because you don't really know what direction the Red Sox are going in. You know, did you think that you were going to make the playoffs last year? The guys that you got rid of, Christian Vasquez, Kyle Schwarber, these guys that you could have kept, they ended up, making deep postseason runs, and some of them even winning the World Series like Vasquez did. I don't know. So, very, very frustrating season for the Red Sox. Just kind of, talking about what I think that they should do. That will be for a future video. So certainly within the next week or two, I'm going to put out a video just kind of regarding what I think the Red Sox should do this offseason, who they should keep, who they should get rid of, who they should target in free agency, who they maybe should trade for. It'll be fun. But for right now, I don't really have much to say on the Red Sox season. It was bad. The fact that the Red Sox, obviously in a good division, not nothing to sneeze at. Yankees are one of the best teams in baseball. Rays were one of the best teams in baseball. Blue Jays, I picked them to win the World Series. Little did I know that they would just fall off the face of the earth and completely stink for the second half of the year. They were in a good division, but there's no excuse for the Red Sox with the payroll that they have to be last place in their division. It's just no excuses. I mean, if you're going to spend all that money, don't put out a team that's this bad. Now, I mean, I guess you get a good draft pick out of it, but I don't know. It is sad to think about, but we'll see where it goes from here. I mean that's really all I have to say about it. I hated it, and every Red Sox fan around the world should have hated it because they were awful. And we'll see what happens next season. So with that, let's move on to our next topic. And quite frankly, the only thing that I can really think to talk about right now is just congratulations to the Houston Astros. They I mentioned it a little earlier. Christian Vasquez won the World Series with Houston. Houston was a problem, and definitely pun intended there. But I didn't realize, quite frankly, until maybe like right at the end of the season, like how ridiculously good the Astros were. I said early on in the season the Astros got worse. I don't think they did. I mean, I think they honestly got better. Justin Verlander, obviously, at 40 years old after, blowing out his arm, comes back and wins Cy Young and Comeback Player of the Year. Like, just crazy stuff. They won 106 games. They got rid of Carlos Correa and somehow got better. They are unstoppable right now. And, I like that they won the World Series, and I know that that's probably an unpopular opinion. I was rooting for the Phillies, but the Astros winning, it does two things. One, it kind of takes that 2017 team that cheated and kind of not liberates them, because they can never be fully liberated for that blemish, but it still gives them something to hold their hat on. Like, no, this team that we built is good enough to win the World Series. Enhancement, no enhancement, cheating, no cheating, whatever, we did it. And they did. Obviously this year. So it does that, but also what it does is it really allows Dusty Baker to be one of the best coaches that has ever lived. Dusty Baker was one of the most beloved coaches. He's coached for the Cubs, he's coached for the Reds, he's coached for the Giants, he's coached for the Astros, obviously, different other teams. And as far as I know, I don't think he's ever won a World Series until this year. So really, really happy for Dusty Baker that he's able to get that before he retired, because Dusty Baker's getting up there in age, guys. I mean, I think he's in his 70s at this point. So, he's getting up there. So really, really, really nice to see him win a World Series. But just in terms of the team itself, they didn't really have many weaknesses on that team. You could maybe say Jeremy Pena at shortstop. was one of their bigger weaknesses on their team, and he just absolutely demolished in the postseason. So I mean, they didn't have any holes. Their pitching was ridiculous this year. Obviously, with Justin Verlander, guys like Luis Garcia, just all the different guys that they have on that staff. Lance McCullers, just unbelievable. I know I'm forgetting some people, but their bullpen was really, really good all season long and in the playoffs, obviously. And, their offense, you had a guy that came in third place in the MVP voting in Yordan Alvarez in the middle of your lineup. You still have Jose Altuve, not quite in his prime, but probably toward the end of his prime. He's, in 32, 33 years old. He's getting to that point where he's probably going to start, declining a little bit, just as that happens with age. And obviously you traded for Christian Vasquez, and you could say you're one of your main weaknesses was the fact that your catcher couldn't really get on base, couldn't really hit, and they got a guy who's about as good as Martin Maldonado behind the plate defensively and with a cannon of an arm, but that could still get on base and could hit a little bit in Christian Vasquez. So, quite frankly, if that was your weakness, if your weakness was Jeremy Pena and you're behind the plate, I mean, they took care of that. Obviously, you still have Alex Bregman. You still have Kyle Tucker. I mean, it's just insane how good the Astros were this year. I don't really have much more to say other than that, but congratulations to the Houston Astros. Good for them, and I don't really see anybody stopping them next year. I really don't, unless something crazy happens. Maybe San Diego, if they put it together over there with all the talent that they have, but that's for a whole nother video, obviously. But for right now, I don't see how the Astros are going to be stopped. They're certainly not going to be stopped by the Yankees, though. I can tell you that. That's going to be it's probably going to be for next week. But yeah, so congratulations again to the Houston Astros. And I would say I hope to see them this successful next year, but I don't. And finally, what I want to talk about is I want to end the video talking about the Boston Celtics. Let's talk about last year first before I kind of get into this year. Last year was so much fun. I do not remember having that much fun watching basketball in a long time. The Celtics team that went to the finals last year made me smile and laugh and cry and be so angry all at the same time. Just it was a beautiful time. They came up short, obviously, in the finals. I will say this, if you go back and watch my predictions video, the only reason I'm mad is because I thought the Celtics would put up more of a fight on their home court in Game 6. I predicted they would win that and then lose Game 7, but the Celtics had already kind of folded at that point. Now, I didn't know that would happen. I didn't realize that they would kind of, at a certain point, just kind of realize that they were doomed by the hands of the chef. But at the same time, I truly felt like I had my hand on the pulse on that one, and I'm very proud of that. But, obviously, even though the Celtics lost, I was so just happy with last year. Obviously, when you get that far, you kind of wish that you would get to the end and win the whole thing because you never know what's going to happen the next year or 2 years later. I mean, you never know. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum could have blew out their ACLs and missed this entire year and then blew them out again. They're never the same, and then they both leave in free agency. You just never know what could happen at any point. So when you get that far, you hope and pray that you can make it and you could win. But, obviously they weren't able to finish the deal. But we're hoping that they'll be back this year, and if early goings are any indication, there's a good shot because the Boston Celtics have been the best team in basketball this year so far. At one point, they won 9 straight. That streak was just snapped the other night at the hands of the Chicago Bulls. But, I mean, you've lost 2 games in the regular, in 4 quarters. And then you've lost 2 games in overtime to a really talented, young, hungry Cleveland Cavaliers team. And other than that, you've won every game, and you've beaten people badly. I watched them beat the Hawks by 20 when, the bench basically, the Boston Celtics bench beat the Atlanta Hawks by 20. Sam Hauser had 4 or 5 threes. Peyton Pritchard had 4 or 5 threes. Grant Williams had 4 or 5 threes. Al Horford had a couple of threes. Like, they're just bombing away. And, Coach Mazzulla is really, really getting these guys prepared, and really they're all buying into his system, and really it's an interesting system of, you've got some mid-range stuff like Jaylen Brown's going to be Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum's going to be Jason Tatum, Al Horford is still going to shoot from the mid-range sometimes, but other than that, it is layups, dunks, or threes. And I think that's the way to go. I really do. Because in today's NBA, analytically, it's just not smart to be living off mid-range jumpers all the time. And, a lot has been kind of talked about the Patriots, Celtics defense being, middle of the road, only like 20th or so in the league right now. But if you kind of look and deep dive into the numbers, they are giving up, I think, like 78% field goal percentage from mid-range. Like, just absurd numbers that, like, don't make sense. And even contested mid-range jumpers, opponents are shooting like 67% or 66% or something around there. Like, these numbers are not sustainable for other teams facing the Celtics defense. I mean, they are doing what they need to do. It's just opponents are just consistently hitting tough shot after tough shot after tough shot after tough shot. Now, obviously, that's not the entire picture, but, just certain statistics like that will tell you that, the Celtics, they're going to kind of regress more towards that top-level defense. And also, Marcus Smart's missed time. Malcolm Brogdon's missed time. Time Lord hasn't even stepped on the court yet for the Boston Celtics as of the recording of this video. Although, from what I hear, he will be back very, very soon. I'm very excited about it. And he's really that guy that's going to be in the in the front court, but in the back of the defense, obviously. And he's kind of your cleanup guy that, you make a mistake on defense, you miss an assignment, somebody gets to the rim, he's going to be there to clean it up. So, he hasn't even stepped on the court yet. And, obviously Al Horford is one more year older, one more season of wear and tear on his knees. He's not going to be the defender that he used to be in his prime. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they have stepped up as perimeter defenders and as defensive leaders and two-way guys, but they can't do it by themselves. And if Malcolm Brogdon, if Malcolm Brogdon and Marcus Smart and all these other guys are not on the floor, your defense is going to suffer a little bit. And I think the Celtics bench this year has, they've kind of sacrificed a little bit of defense for a little bit more offense. And I think you really needed to do that in the finals, because what they realized, I don't know if you guys kind of saw this, but every game, the Golden State Warriors scored about the same amount of points. Somewhere in the 105 to 112 point range. Somewhere in there. Just about every game, that's where they scored. So if you don't score more, you're going to lose. It didn't matter how good your defense was. It didn't matter who you had on the floor. If you know that the Golden State Warriors, and obviously you don't know this, but looking back on it, the Warriors would score no matter if Steph Curry had a bad game, if Klay Thompson had a bad game, if Jordan Poole had a bad game or good game or whatever. If they all scored around the same amount of points every night, no matter what. So they basically probably looked at that and said, well, look, it didn't matter how good our defense was, you have to score. So, yes, you still got Grant Williams coming off of your bench. But other than that, your guys coming off your bench are Derek White, who's another good defender, but he has really blossomed offensively as well this year. Peyton Pritchard, who he's a tenacious defender, but he's undersized. So he's not really going to help you all that much on the defensive end. Sam Hauser, who is long and rangy, but he's not as quick, athletic. He's not as doggedly determined on the defensive end as some other guys might be. And Luke Cornett, who's, long, lanky, but again, not super athletic, not really dogged and determined on the defensive end. He's, you're going to be able to go by him. You're going to be able to get to the rim. Like, that's your bench right now. So for me, looking at the team this year, they certainly are wanting more offense than defense, and it shows in the numbers. Up until recently, and they may even still be on pace, I haven't looked in the last couple of days, not since before the Chicago game, the Celtics had the best offense ever in terms of numbers up to this point. I mean, you're talking numbers that are ridiculous. Shooting 50% from three as a team, almost. Derek White, who statistically throughout his career has been roughly 29 to 32% three-point shooter, shooting 46% from three. Grant Williams is shooting 50% from three. Sam Hauser shooting 50% from three. Peyton Pritchard shooting 50% from three. Jaylen Brown shooting 40% from three. Tatum has struggled a little bit from three. He's only shooting about 38%. But even 38% is not horrendous. Like, that's not, you're not going to be super concerned about that. Considering Jason Tatum's averaging 30 a night right now, I'm not at all concerned about it. It's just a matter of those shots not going in right now. But, you've got all these, even Al Horford shooting somewhere in the 40 to 42% range from three. You got all of these guys that are really putting up numbers. The only guy that's, the only two guys that are really struggling from three right now are Brogdon, who hasn't been on the court all that much, so I'm giving him a pass, and Marcus Smart, who never has been successful really from three-point range, but you can even see that he's gotten better at like those transition pull-up threes. He's actually shooting about 38% on those, which, again, not the best number in the world, but for Marcus Smart, that's pretty darn good. At a certain point, you got to at least tip your cap to that, right? But on just like, I think it's, he's shooting like 19% on just catch and shoot threes, which obviously that's going to go up too. He's not going to shoot 19% from three for an entire season if he's open. Like, he's not that bad of a shooter. Nobody in the NBA, quite frankly, would be, well, maybe some of the centers, but, nonetheless, no guard's going to be that bad from three unless you're Ben Simmons. But that's a whole nother story. Anyway, so, it's just really, really interesting kind of the difference between the Celtics last year, who solely relied on their defense in a lot of ways, and then this year, not solely relying on their offense, but it does kind of seem that way if you kind of just look at the numbers and you're not really watching the games and you're not really diving into the deeper stats, right? So, again, the Celtics defense has given up a lot of points, but a lot of it is these guys are hitting tough shots. And, you got to expect, if you're doing things right on defense, those numbers are going to come down. And, Malcolm Brogdon is a really good perimeter defender. He's missed a few games. He's missed a ton of games. Al Horford has not played in several games because obviously he's getting up there in age, so they're wanting to rest him a little bit more often. He's, without Robert Williams down there, he's your anchor defensively. He's the guy that's in the back, trying to stop these guys from getting to the rim. And if he's gone, you don't really have much without Rob Williams there. He's missed a few games. Marcus Smart's missed a ton of games. Defensive Player of the Year last year. You lose him, your defense is going to be worse. That's just how it goes. And then obviously, certain other guys that, have played this year, they've struggled a little bit. Look, I watch the games, right? I see Grant Williams able to stay in front of all these guys, get his hands up, do what he can. Guys are just finishing through him, finishing over him. It's not because he's doing anything wrong. It's just these guys are hitting tough shots. These guys are able to take the contact and just muscle their way through it. And again, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown have played very, very well this year, as has Grant Williams, as has Al Horford. But at the same time, guys are hitting really, really tough shots. And if you're the Celtics, you're getting open threes, you're getting to the rim, you're getting to the free throw line. Jason Tatum is shooting more free throws this year than any year so far in his career on a per-game basis. Jaylen Brown has improved tremendously from the free throw line. You could tell this offseason specifically, he probably spent a lot of time at the free throw line working on that because he's always been around, 70, 73, 75%. He's shooting in the 80s now, 86, 87% right now. At least last time I looked at it. Obviously, it could have gone down at this point. But, and it's only been a few games. So, obviously, if you miss a few, it's going to go down pretty significantly. But, he's gotten a lot better from the free throw line. And then you obviously have other guys like Pritchard, other guys like Grant Williams that have improved from the free throw line. Al Horford gets to the free throw line at a pretty decent clip in limited minutes. So, all these things on offense that you're doing right, and you're getting open shots, you're getting to the free throw line, you're shooting, at the rim. that sustainability over time versus sustainability of your opponents shooting these tough mid-range jumpers, contested threes, really being contested at the rim as best you can with the limited front court, depth that you have, right? Heck, even Blake Griffin's been out there, and yeah, he's never really been the best defender. Right? Quite frankly, he's been a pretty bad one, especially the last few years as he's gotten older and battled injuries. He's not been as quick or as agile. He looks like he's in the best shape of his life right now. Now, I'm not saying that means he's dominating on defense, but he looks like he's certainly put in the work to at least be tenacious and give his all on defense and give all of his effort on the defensive end and at least not be, somebody that you can't play at all because he's just a revolving door on defense like Jabari Parker was at one point in kind of a similar role that Blake Griffin has played throughout this year. So, for me, the sustainability of the Celtics offense, that's real. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to stay as the best offense of all time. That would be an absurd statement to say because they're most likely not going to. I guess you never know. But the sustainability of that versus opponents making all these really tough shots over a period of a season, especially in the postseason, when defense is ramped up to 11, I feel really good about that. That's just me, though. I feel really good about the Celtics. Right now, they're 13-4. They have one of the best records, if not the best record, in all of basketball right now. People were writing the Celtics off once Ime Udoka, got fired and suspended, or maybe at least just suspended for that kind of whole circumstance, which again, that's for another video, but they were writing the Celtics off, and I thought that was just not a good idea. It's not like I predicted Sam Hauser, stepping up and being this good of a shooter and this much of a contributor right away, but they got better this offseason. They went to the NBA Finals, they kept that entire core and added Malcolm Brogdon. At the very least, that was the team that you were going to face. Obviously, to open up the season, you lost Rob Williams, but think about this team when they're fully healthy. I mean, and this is stuff that people knew going into the season. It's not like that they just did it, like, they were talking about it all off season, and then all of a sudden, Ime Udoka leaves in training camp, and everybody just, and then everybody shows up, right? Like, oh, they got Derek White, they got Rob Williams, no, everybody was there already. So everybody already had this information. Think about this team when it's fully healthy. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Malcolm Brogdon, Marcus Smart, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, who obviously now knowing what a contributor he is, Al Horford, Danilo Gallinari got hurt, so that, that stinks. But, I mean, you've got all of these guys. Grant Williams, can't believe I didn't even mention Grant Williams. I mean, you're 9 or 10 guys deep that, they're not all going to be all-stars, obviously, but these are guys that are capable on any given night of putting up ridiculous numbers. Now, not everybody's Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, but we've seen Grant Williams be able to hit 7 or 8 threes in a game if you let him. Al Horford, I mean, just look at the Bucks series. There are games where he scored, almost 30 points. He can do that if you let him. Marcus Smart is a guy, he might not score 30, but he can be a 15 and 8 kind of guy on a nightly basis. He's good at finishing at the rim. When he's hitting his shot from 3, it really spreads out the offense, and it really, really bodes well. Derek White had no jump shot, basically, for his whole career, and was still putting up 12 or 13 points a night for the Spurs. And now he's shooting at a 40% clip for the Celtics right now. Now, again, I don't know how sustainable that number is, but I mean, his shot just looks so much better. He looks so much more confident. And I know in press conferences after the season, they said, "Hey, what are you going to work on?" I'm going to work on getting to know the system, and I'm going to work on my shot. I'm going to just shoot and just get better at that. And you could tell that he's done that. You could tell that he's worked on that shot and gotten a lot more comfortable out there in that system. And obviously, somebody like a Malcolm Brogdon, who his driving ability is top notch. It's one of the best in the NBA. And so he's going to be able to open up a lot of lanes for you. I mean, this is not new knowledge for people. This is the team that the Celtics have had. You're talking about a team that went to the finals and were 2 games away from winning the finals. Let's not forget that. At one point, they were up 2-1 in the series and going into game 4 at home. So it's not like the Celtics got demolished so badly in the finals that they had no chance. Sometimes it felt that way by the end, but at one point in the series, it was really looking like the Celtics were going to win the finals. And then in the offseason, they got Malcolm Brogdon. I mean, at the very least, that's going to be one of the top teams in the East. I mean, I don't see how it couldn't be, but still, people were writing them off. People were saying, nope, they're not going to make it to the finals. They're not going to, not that they're not going to make the playoffs, but, you got Milwaukee, you got Cleveland, you got Brooklyn. Everybody wants it to be Brooklyn, man. But look at the tail of the tape. Brooklyn is struggling. Boston is not. I don't know what else these people have to do to show which is the successful kind of system and which is not. I don't care how good on paper the Brooklyn Nets look. It's culture. And the culture in Boston for that team in that locker room is all business. And the Celtics, quite frankly, I don't see a team right now other than maybe Milwaukee, who they are also all business, that's going to have any chance to stop them right now. Now, obviously, we're very early on in the season. If I had said that at this time last year, I would have gotten laughed out of my podcast. I would have gotten everything shut down. People would have stolen my cameras and told me never to open up my mouth again. But you never know what's going to happen. I mean, the New York Knicks, in theory, could win 40 out of their next 50 games and be the best team in the East by the end of the year. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but hey, it might. You never know what's going to happen. So, obviously, take the I don't know who's going to stop them comment with a grain of salt. But right now, there's not a team in the NBA that I look at and I think that they are consistently going to be better. And I definitely don't look at any team in the NBA right now and say that team is going to be better than the Boston Celtics in a 7-game series. I just don't see that right now. I definitely don't see that in the Warriors right now. But granted, they struggled last year as well early on. So we'll see how it goes. But that's going to do it for me, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. And like I said, these things will kind of be broken up. So if you made it all the way to the end of this video, that's super, super cool. Thank you so much. But obviously there's going to be shorter videos that are going to be posted later on throughout the next day, a day to 2 days, 3 days. Whenever you're watching this, if they haven't already been posted, obviously. And that's going to kind of be the norm. So it'll be a full podcast. So if you guys want to watch the full podcast, you can. If not, they'll be kind of broken up into little chunks throughout the rest of the season. And also keep an eye out for those YouTube shorts I told you about in the last video. Those will be coming out soon as well. But other than that, please do follow me on Twitter and at Facebook. Lopes Goes Last podcast, on Facebook, and Lopes Goes Last on Twitter. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you all, and I will see you next time. Hey guys, me again. I just want to say thank you so much for checking out the Lopes Goes Last podcast. It means the world to me that you decided to stick all the way to the end. That's super cool. So thank you again. And if you really, really like what you see, I'd love for you to subscribe, like the video, and share it with all your family and friends because, this is my passion project. This is what I love to do, and I really want the sucker to grow. And the only way that can happen is through you guys, is if you guys can help me out. So again, if you like what you saw, please subscribe, like the video, share it with all your friends and family. That's the only way this is going to grow. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.